Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not to Comic Book. This being a show, it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Superman and Lois. Great episode, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously we're picking up the conversation between Clark and Bizarro about the world he comes from. We get a little insight into it. Now, I don't know if that's supposed to be like, oh, that cat's something else, or whether that was just like just a beautiful cinematic shot, or just like the lighting and stuff like that just hitting from like outside. But we did see a family photo. It seemed like Lois and Jonathan were X'd out of it, but Jordan wasn't. So I'm assuming, like, I wonder, do they stand on opposite sides of each other in that world? Because we didn't get any inkling about Jordan's whereabouts. But we also saw, like, the fact is he's wearing that suit. The fact is he went up against, like, the military to get to Allie. He ended up having to even go up against one of the Superman of America, which was Lana. So you're like, what was so different in that world that she became a Superman of America? Like, how did that happen? You know? Because he talks about it later on with Clark. He's like, I'm not as beloved in my world as you are here. So that's why I'm like, they are inverses of each other. So it's like, is he a villain? Like, does he still have the, like, family life? Like, could it be a thing of he never told Lois the truth, and so they eventually found out he was the bad guy that he was, and, like, what happened? Or is it kind of like a thing of something tragic happened? I don't know. Or were they okay with him being the bad guys? Like, how far down the rabbit hole does this inverse of each other go? But it seems like he didn't kill Allie from the other world. He just took the pendant. And he used it to come here. I guess, because the way the sun was, I was like, is that almost supposed to be like a red sun? I was like, well, never mind, I forgot. It's the inverse. So, like, yes, he would be more powerful from a red sun compared to Clark, who, and any other Kryptonian who gets, from this world, getting stronger off a yellow sun. In fact, the yellow sun is why he's actually weaker. I get that wearing that suit actually benefited him. So I guess that's why he probably picks a lot of locations where the yellow sun isn't prominent. It's just because that means his powers won't be as tainted. But obviously the yellow kryptonite took its toll on him. I'm wondering, like, did that armor protect him from it a lot? But his main reason for trying to kill Clark is because he needs to get rid of those visions. Because him being in the same world is having an effect on him like that. It's having an effect on both of them. But he's also, like, right, he's kind of a soldier of war himself, where it's like, two people dying, and it's like, yeah, that's just the matter of fact, that's just the way things are, so. It's kind of like a necessary sacrifice because we need to stop Allie. Because the way he talks about it, essentially his world and this world were basically the same at one point in time, but something happened in their history, in their past, that basically split them in two. So these pendants are polar opposites to each other, and if they're ever united, the person basically can become a god. So it's like, you gotta stop. Like, that's the thing. I guess Allie, like, in the Bizarro world, ended up, like, amassing so much power. It's like, how does she get there? I guess it's just like anything. Like, with a big enough cult following, she had enough power and influence to get what she needed. But the way, like, the fact is that Bizarro was able to just kind of roll up and, granted, he had to go through quite a few people to get to her, but he was able to get to her and just snatch the necklace off of her, and just, like, I guess it's like, by saving this other world, by killing Allie, preventing her from ever fusing with her other self, she won't ever ascend to godhood and all that. So that was his main mission. But it's like, right, if you can't destroy the pendant, which he couldn't because he's just not strong enough, because the yellow sun has been draining his power. So being in this world, it's just a constant drain on him. He's always going to be in a weakened state. But it's up to, he's like, it's up to you. If you can't destroy the pendant, you're going to have to kill Allie. That's the only surefire way to end all this. The question is, though, Lois is saying, like, do you trust him? And it's like, it matches with what he said so far, but you also don't know how much. But there's a lot Bizarro's also not telling us. We don't know anything about his life, his circumstances, other than what he's kind of given us. So, and kind of on that inverse angle of things, Sam ended up bringing Lucy around, which, at first, like, Lois and her are butting heads, but, Sam was just like, no Allie talk, and without the Allie stuff, it did feel like they were slowly but surely, like, going back into the swing of things, like, joking about things with her dad. The fact is, Sam and Lucy were talking to Jordan and Jonathan about football, it was almost nice having their family kind of whole again, you know? And I thought that was such an interesting aspect, but sadly, it couldn't last forever. Even though they had their moments and everything, it's still just a thing of, I mean, truth be told is, Lois isn't the one who broached the subject. Lucy is. Lucy's like, well, now you know the truth. It's like, yeah, but don't you have questions? Like, maybe Allie's more dangerous. Like, there's some, it's like, okay, first you denied it. Now, like, you acting like, it's like, you can never be wrong. It's like, yeah, but just because she can't ever be wrong about something, does that automatically make you right about all of this? It's like, the thing is, it's like, yeah, she drugged my friend and partner Chrissy into, like, you know, it's like, if she had willingly done it, that's one thing, but she didn't. And, you know, that in itself is why Lois was scared to death. It's like, she convinced you to be in a position to almost kill yourself, because of that, like, Lucy's so far down the rabbit hole that she's thinking, like, no, like, it's, sometimes extreme measures have to be taken, like, to, you know, to get the truth out there. But it's like, to such extremes that people could die from this. Someone already did. Like, you almost did. So, and it is sad because Lois was happy because it was like, she was like, yeah, like, because, like, her and Lucy were joking about, like, oh, yeah, sneaking out and stuff like that. And she's like, yeah, maybe I'll teach the boys that. It's like, you're not going to. She's like, yeah, but, you know, I get to, you know, kind of, like, teach kind of the bad stuff to my nephews and stuff. And sadly, that all kind of blew up in that moment, which, you know, Sam kind of blames himself because he's like, right, if I had basically, you know, paid more attention, if he wasn't so focused on work and everything, if he hadn't thrown himself into work, maybe he could have seen the signs early on and was there, and just so that Lucy wouldn't have had to turn to someone like Allie. But, you know, Lucy's, I mean, Lana's, not Lana, God, I'm saying, like, literally every other name. Lois, jeez. Lois is like, yeah, you can't, like, you wouldn't be able to do enough to really, like, stop all that. He's like, yeah, being a parent never goes older. It never gets easier. She's like, yeah, tell that to someone who had to breastfeed him. Or he's like, whoa, too much information. It's like, or change twin diapers when they pooped at the same time. He's like, okay, it gets easier in some regards, you know? So I'm interested to see where things kind of go on that front. Because, like, Lois is willing to listen now, but the problem is she's like, I have questions, though. Like, maybe Allie isn't the altruistic person you're kind of making her out to be, that maybe she has her own ulterior motives, you know? But can't necessarily bring everything that she's learned from Bizarro out to the forefront because, you know, that's not going to really go over well. But it's like, yeah, like, maybe there's more to this. Maybe it's not necessarily a good thing combining with, like, this inverse version of yourself. Like, maybe there is something dangerous here that we should be wary of. Like, just got to get more information, essentially. The main overarching thing is that Clark needs to get the pendant back. And the only way he's going to get that is by talking to Anderson, which I love. He got chewed out by his superior because she was like, Sam Lane had a good working relationship with Superman for 20 years. Some of that doesn't hurt that some of that situation is like, some of that time was him aware that Superman was his son-in-law. How much of that time did, like, he know? He couldn't have known that long. I'm trying to think, was that their entire marriage or whatever? They've definitely been married for a while, so I don't know. That might have been their entire, you know? So that's why I'm curious. Either way. I should also note, this episode was directed by Amy Jo Johnson. I just thought that was kind of interesting. Best thing I know her from is, like, a part of my childhood. She was, the Pink Ranger in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the OG Pink Ranger. I don't know if she already had her episode. I'm blanking on the actress's name, and I feel so bad because I saw her name. She was directing an episode. I don't remember if it was last week's episode because I didn't look. I remember seeing that she was coming up as a director, but the actress who plays Gemma in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., she directed an episode of Superman and Lois, I think. I don't remember if it was last week's episode. I have to look into that. Well, I'll go ahead and look into it now. The actress I'm referencing is Elizabeth Henstridge, and it's like, no, in fact, her episode's next week. I was like, oh, because I saw her name, and I was like, her name seems so familiar, and I looked, I was like, Jim from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So that's pretty dope. First, like, Amy Jo Johnson, and then Elizabeth Henstridge. I was like, oh, that's pretty dope. Regardless, I'm going on a bit of a tangent, but I was just like, I'd completely forgotten about that last episode, but last episode wasn't her episode. Her episode, she's directing us next week's. But nevertheless, I just wanted to kind of, because I had that in my mind, but circling back to things, my whole point before I went on that huge tangent was the fact is that it's like, yeah, you've been here 6 months and you pretty much soured our relationship with and I love this. That it's just, you know, and I think maybe that is that US-centric perspective of things. It's like, no. Superman is our line of defense. It's like, no, he's the world's line of defense. It's almost like that's why Anderson has that twisted mentality he does, because it's like he works with the U.S. government from time to time, and so people think like, no, you work, you're an asset for. It's like, no, I'm an asset to the world. I'm not allocated to just one government. I am a protector of the human species, not just the American species. You know, see what I'm saying? Like, I think that's so fascinating, because even she was kind of saying like, you can basically screw things up. 6 months after being here for 6 months with our asset, like, basically find this thing. If you don't, you're going to lose all your position and stuff. So he's under pressure. So obviously, you know, plus at the funeral, he gets all the blame for everything. One of the Supermen of America, like her mom, like is so disappointed in him, saying he's a disappointment. And Clark is like, all right, like, I want to talk to you about things. It's like, why didn't you say anything from her? He's like, the fact is, I've talked to this thing. He's like, why are you talking to it? It's like, he's like, there's something else going on here. Like, this pendant is dangerous. We should destroy it. He's like, fine, I'm going to run it up the chain. He's like, cool. Then Clark takes off, and it's like he has one of his subordinates like, find out where he went. Well, apparently he went to Russia. And you could tell for a moment, he was like, what was he doing in Russia? He saved some small town to say, we'll never be in a position where he will ever trust me enough to tell me things. But it's like, trust has to go both ways. The fact of the matter is, because you could tell at first he was almost like, oh, why was he in Russia? Because, you know, once again, he did kind of save a sub that was like North Koreans, and it had like weapons aboard. So it's like, you know, but he doesn't get caught up in those aspects of it. Once again, the implications are there. You are this powerful worldly being that is like, yeah, you can't be left unchecked. But I just thought that was so fascinating. It's just like, it's his ego plus his position is slipping from him because he's kind of under pressure. Like, if I don't get this done, because soldiers are dead because of my mistakes, so I got to make up for them too. These parents deserve justice. So all that is him making some choices he shouldn't be making, which includes using red sunlight to weaken Superman. And obviously there's a parallel between, and I think they did it shot for shot of his Bizarro's fight at the beginning with the military. So, oh, that's interesting. The only other Superman of America they have is Tag, and I think he's still out of commission. Don't know if he'd be all too keen about going up against Superman, considering Superman saved his life, so. But the fact is, Anderson's willing to go this far. He's like, oh yeah, no, like, the biggest threat is you. I was like, what are you doing? I thought he was twisting it to the people and be like, actually, it's actually Superman. He's actually the bad guy. I didn't know what he was, but it's like, no, they're recognizing him as a national threat. Even Sam later on was like, they arrested him from treason. I was like, what are you doing? Oh yeah. You know, Clark was even saying, like, you don't have to do this. Shot him twice with kryptonite bullets. It's like, he's like, you gave me no choice. So cool. Until he gives us information about where that creature is, he's going to stay locked up. It's like, cool. I cannot wait for the ripple effect to come back, because this is going to blow up in your face the biggest way possible, and you're going to have to eat crow for this. You deserve to eat crow for. I was like, oh my God. And the fact is, people signed off on this too, because it's like, right, he's endangering this country because he's protecting an asset that is protecting something dangerous. He's withholding information that is valuable for protecting this country. You know, so he doesn't have this country's best interest at heart. It's like, yeah, I'm sure that's the narrative. All they had to do was spin it. And like, obviously, they're definitely not going to make that public. There's no way people are going to be like, yeah, the government arrested Superman. You're like, what? No, because they know if they publicize that, they'd be crucified. It's like, whoa, you talking about the same guy who just flew to Russia to save a small village? Yeah. Oh, you arrested that guy for treason? It's like, no, it's not. So this is just going to be a hush-hush. The only reason, obviously, Sam's got his connection, so I guess people still loyal to him trickled it down, be like, yo, Sam, you should know this, man. Superman got arrested. It's like, what? And it's like, oh, where are they sending him? It's like, yeah, sending him with his brother. I'm like, oh, boy. His brother's going to yip and be like, I told you, bro. I told you. Because that's the messed up thing. Once again, I will always go back to it. That conversation about trust with Jordan is so damn good last season. Like that speech and just like even how he talks about like sometimes I have to like hold myself back because if that trust people build up for me, it doesn't matter how long I've been doing this, which let's face it, it's been like decades now. My people's trust in me is being tested every time I use my powers. And that's a sad thing, that no matter what, this is proof of that no matter what, you are always one misstep away from being brain number one enemy just because of who you are. Because you don't show allegiance just to one group. Once again, for him, it's like that shield, the sigil of the L family, it's meant to be a shield not just for America. It's meant to be a shield for this entire planet. His loyalty is just to humans in general. But that's just it doesn't sit well with the U.S. Once again, Sam had the personal connection being like, you're my son-in-law, so I'm gonna let a lot of that slide. Plus, you do good for the world. Plus, you also help with American interests, so it balances itself out. But when he kind of goes like, They don't like the fact is he's not someone that can be reined in and controlled, like him doing whatever he wants to. It's like, yeah, but once again, it's like Anderson's mishaps led to this. Like, rather than being amendable to everything, it's kind of like he warned you not to be sending kids out into this world, how dangerous things could be. But did he listen? No, he didn't, so... But like I said, it's like his brother's just going to be like, man, I told you so. See what you did? You betrayed all of your people who would have had your back the entire time for people who will never fully support you, who will never trust you. What have you done? You've served them for decades and it's still not enough. The moment you don't bend a knee to them, they will make you. Oh, it's definitely going to be interesting to see those conversations next episode about, Sam being like, what the hell are you doing? To the conversations between Clark and his brother. So all that's going to be fascinating. But other elements to this episode, we have the whole Jonathan thing, because Jordan's like so excited. Like, oh my God, you have powers too, bro. Like having someone his own age that's going through it with him too. He's like, yo, do you have that thing? And he's like, what? I forgot what he called it. Like, he referenced kind of like a taste in your mouth from having cold breath. He's like, oh, you'll get there eventually. So it's like, cool, like, come on, like, oh, maybe we can tell, Grandpa about you too. And he's like, why? It's like, yeah, because that way we could really be training together, like, fraternal twins. And you're like, he's like, yeah, okay, like, the fraternals or whatever is what he was going to call them. And obviously things have worked out for Jordan. The fact is he's getting the opportunity he wanted to, because it turns out Timmy got removed from the spot. So this is his time to shine. So he's inhaling up. But then in the aftermath, he is killing it on a football field. But it rained shallow because he's like, right, I didn't earn it. Like, this is just, I basically was doping. And Jordan ended up finding out what it was, ended up confronting him. He's like, what is this about? He's like, it's like, oh, is it because you can't accept the fact that I'm better than you? He's like, no, that ain't even what this is about. He's like, that's what it's always been about. It's like, right, you can have powers, but I can't. But it's like, no, because you're acting like a dick, dude. You're not yourself. Like, this stuff is messing with your head. And it's like, man, that's such a... And he doesn't even realize it because he started going a little aggro when his bro tried to stop him. Like, the fact is, and that could easily escalate into something, like, if they ever have to, like, duke it out. Which even, like, Lois had referenced, like, yeah, I'm sure you've had your fill with, like, when she was talking to Sam about how I'm sure you've had your fill with sibling rivalries for today. So, that was a, But at the end of the day, it's like, oh, how'd you find out? And Jordan was like, because Timmy got busted for it. Like, the police are investigating it. So Jonathan's kind of like, cool, cool, cool. Like, I don't know if that's something you can even test for, like, in people. But it's also like, once again, what happens with most drugs? A withdrawal phase. So, because also, once again, we don't know what the long-term effects of this X-kryptonite is, like, on a regular human body, like, inhaling it like that. Who knows what the long terms could be? Like, that could be destroying someone's body, like, you know, in the long run, pushing the human body, like, past its limits with abilities like that, and, you know, maybe that's a look, but, if I'm not, I should also circle back to, like, kind of tying that in. If I'm not mistaken, it seemed like, Bizarro was kind of doing the same, like, because before he left to come to this world, like, when he ended up in the mines or whatever, he ended up inhaling something, so I'm like, is that kind of a version of that as well? Like, what's going on there? Because once again, why does he look the way he does? Because it's not like, oh, everyone on his world looks like that. It's like, no, he's the only one that's got, like, the blue eyes. Which, I didn't even think about that till now, because once again, the thing I best know Tyler Hoechlin for is Teen Wolf. Derek had blue eyes. It was a very special reason why Derek had blue eyes, you know, that being a whole thing. Like, if you've never seen Teen Wolf, once again, I hardly recommend you watch Teen Wolf, especially because they're coming up with a movie and potentially a spin-off series, the whole thing. But, him having, so it didn't even correlate in my head to be like, oh yeah, here's Tyler Hoechlin with, like, very specific piercing blue eyes yet again, and it's like, oh, it's for the purposes of, you know, but I'm like, oh, like, what? Maybe that's also kind of like similar to the X-kryptonite. Maybe a prolonged use did that to his eyes. Who knows? But I think because it, like I said, it did seem like he was inhaling something before he took off from his world. So we'll see how that all plays out. But it definitely put a sour note on, like, Jordan and Jonathan, because it's almost just like, bro, I can't believe you're doing this. And the fact is that he's like, you're getting so egotistical, like, because the sad thing is he is depressed, like, just like Sarah said last time. It's like, your brother's depressed, and the fact is that he's just feeling like inadequate compared to everyone else, because he's already feeling like, all right, because once again, he was always the one who got the shine, and for the longest time his brother was the wallflower, and now he's the one kind of like put to the shadows and the sidelines, and he's never been really open with that. You know, he's been burying that the entire time, but, you know, he's made his mark, because even him and his mom talked about it last episode about, like, right, being ordinary in a family of supers, like, you know, that's a very specific role, like, having to find your way and navigating through that. Lois found her way through it, but also she's an adult. He's a, you know, teenager, so it's like, of course, like, that road's going to get a little bumpier, in comparison to anyone else, so. But, regardless, it's going to be interesting to see where that goes. And then finally we have the whole situation, the aftermath of, the Cushings. Obviously Lana's trying to hold it together, but, I thought it was beautiful. Like, obviously the question comes up of, like, oh, will daddy ever come back? And it's like, I don't know. But no matter what, your dad will always be in your life because he loves both of you. And Sarah, like, hugging her mom from behind when her mom's kind of breaking down a little bit. And she ends up talking to, well, because he actually stops by the house and says, like, what I did, like, it went on for 6 months. Was she ever in this house once? He's like, did you love her? It's like, no, I loved you. I made a mistake. He's like, look at us. It's like, that man who I was all those years ago, he loves you. He still does. And so Lana's not sure what to do about it. And I thought it was interesting, her talking to Clark about everything. It's nice having a friend, you know, to really kind of open up to about. And it is a complicated thing of, like, what does she do? You know, it's like, what if you found out Lois cheated on you? And he's like, I need to take all the information. It's like, and even then, even with all the information, it doesn't make it any easier. It's like, would you be able to forgive her? If I was willing to continue the marriage, I would have to be okay with everything. And, like, I'd have to forgive her, but, and that depends on the person. Like, that's not an easy thing of, like, oh, like, you know, it's just like, oh, divorce him. Like, some people, I don't know. I can't honestly say, like, there is an easy solution through that, especially when it's a situation of, like, this is someone you love, but it also is the thing of, like, right, as Sarah kind of puts it, it's time and time again. She's the one time and time again giving Kyle a chance. It's like, yes, he screwed up. Yes, apparently this affair wasn't a recent thing. It was actually way in the past. Not way in the past, but it's not as recent as I thought it was. But doesn't make it any better. Because Lois, taking what Clark said about gathering the information, she met with the woman he was having an affair with, and she's like, regardless of anything, Kyle's a good guy. He he loves his family. He wanted to do what was best for them. And it's like, she's like, so when did you things end 2 years ago? And it's like, that was after Sarah's accident. And so you're like, okay. So, and then at moments you could tell Lois wasn't too happy with that response. And even when she talks to Kyle later on, it's like, right, if it wasn't for Sarah's incident, like, would you have ended that affair for the sake of our marriage? And he was like, oh, of course I would. That's the thing, though. Like, you could have beforehand, but it took Sarah's situation to make you... But even then, we know, like, oh, like, it still didn't get better. He still had his issues afterwards. He was just home and just, And I think it's interesting because Lois says, like, right, you got to figure out who you are. Because he's saying all this stuff, but, like, you're right. You're holding on to, like, who you were, like, kind of this 20 years ago. We are not those same, like, teenagers we were when we fell in love and everything. Like, it's like, you got to figure yourself out. He's like, she's like, you may still love me, but, and he's like, whoa, do you not love me anymore? She's like, I don't know, but I need time to figure it out. Until then, like, I need you to move out. And it's like, yo, there's no easy solution. And I think Lois is doing what's best for her, until because she needs time and space to figure this out. And Kyle needs time and space to figure himself out. Hopefully this doesn't send him spiraling back down to drinking again. But, we'll see if there's going to be a road back from this. Like, can they find their way back to each other? Because the thing is, this isn't just going to be a Lana and Kyle thing. This is also, like, obviously Sarah's going to feel a certain way. Like, it's always a thing of, she's always, like, she's definitely never given... She gives Kyle way less leeway with his BS than Lana does. So, how this affects their relationship going forward... It's probably going to be like, you broke our family. Like, I allowed myself to believe that you were getting better. I got fooled again. It's like, no, it's not going to happen. So, just like she was talking about with her mom, like, again and again getting fooled by him, I think the same thing's applicable in this situation. So, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where things take us on that more personal level next episode as well. But I'm excited to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.